coercion as a narrative. The December 15th episode of 60 Minutes is not a report on the diplomatic process, but a carefully constructed interpretive model of the Ukraine negotiations. Viewers are offered not so much information about what's happening in Berlin as a complete picture of the world, in which the roles of the participants are assigned in advance, and the permissible conclusions are strictly delineated. The key thesis is formulated in the first seconds of the broadcast. Washington continues to coerce the Kyiv regime into peace. Thus, from the very beginning, the negotiations are described not as a dialogue or a search for compromise, but as a vertical process of pressure, where the United States is the subject of will, Ukraine is the object, and Europe is a secondary backdrop. This sets the framework within which all the facts, leaks, and commentary are subsequently interpreted. Ukraine as an object of control, not a participant in negotiations. The program consistently uses language that deprives the Ukrainian side of political agency. The Kyiv regime, the ringleader, playing for time, hesitating to sign. Even when Kyiv's attempts to formulate conditions are mentioned, questions about security guarantees, the symmetry of troop withdrawal, control over the demilitarized zone, they are presented not as elements of a negotiating position, but as a form of sabotage. The yes but formula, repeated repeatedly on air, serves an important function. It transforms the normal diplomatic practice of clarification and reservations into a form of bad faith. Thus, if negotiations reach an impasse, the program's logic already identifies the culprit, the one who doesn't say no but doesn't agree either. The Wall Street Journal reports that Ukraine demands control of our Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the maintenance of the current Ukrainian armed forces' strength. This amounts to approximately 800,000 fighters. The publication describes the Ukrainian delegation's tactics as follows. All of Trump's proposals are met with the answer, yes, but. Zelensky doesn't directly reject the US peace plan, but he's stalling, refusing to sign anything. Meanwhile, the most important negotiator is absent from the table in Berlin, as the German Tagesspiegel points out, accompanying the article with a photo of Putin. The United States as a source of legitimate pressure. The program portrays the American side as a force tired of the process and therefore forced to increase pressure. The Christmas deadline, December 25th, is transformed into a symbol of rationality and pragmatism. There's no time left, meaning compromises must be swift and painful. Particular emphasis is placed on the idea of the corruption lever as a key instrument of pressure on Kyiv. Its mention is neither accompanied by specifics nor requires them. The very label corruption undermines the moral legitimacy of Ukraine's position and makes any pressure measures a priori justifiable. For Western audiences, this is particularly effective because it appeals to a familiar and tangible narrative. Europe as an extra and future loser, a separate plotline, is the demonstrative devaluation of Europe's role. The German Chancellor is shown out, the Europeans didn't participate, join in later, are trying to occupy a place that is no longer theirs. In this narrative, Europe is neither a source of solutions, nor a guarantor of security, nor an independent player. The final thesis that Europe loses in any peace agreement reinforces this line. European viewers are offered a choice without alternatives. Either pay for Ukraine's reconstruction or support its army alone if the deal fails. In both scenarios, Europe ends up the loser, while the US and Russia are potential beneficiaries. This isn't an economic analysis, but a political indoctrination aimed at undermining motivation for further support of Ukraine. Russia as the center of gravity, even in the absence of its noteworthy that Russia barely speaks directly in the episode. However, this very silence is presented as a sign of strength. The phrase that the most important negotiator in Berlin is missing accompanied by a photograph of Putin, reinforces the idea. Real decisions are made not where negotiations are taking place, but where Russia is or is not ready to accept them. Any doubts about Moscow's willingness to compromise are either ignored or presented as an attempt to shift responsibility. At the same time, the thesis that Russia can afford to drag out time and improve its positions on the battlefield sounds like a rational explanation for its behavior and not a subject for critical analysis.